make all the demons quiet. Yeah, we were built.
Hey, family, thank you so much for chiming in. For every action is a reaction, for every non action is the aftermath. Today, we will be talking about Juneteenth. And you know, within Juneteenth, a lot of people are trying to have clarity of what this thing is about. So I want to do that. I want us to be fresh. I want us to be kind of enlightening and not a discussion where we're debating, but that we have clarification of who are the descendants of slaves, what do they bring to the table, and why should we be discussing this? I recently went to a Juneteenth event today, and what I found interesting is that the Juneteenth event I went today went into a whole discussion of Dr. King. So I thought I'd bring up three questions. Number one, is Juneteenth the same as Dr. King's holiday? Number two, is Juneteenth a Black holiday or American holiday? And number three, do people truly understand American history? And I think if we talk those clarifications, get those clarification conversations out there, we will be better people. Let me give a shout out to some of my family that's chiming in. How you doing, Earl? Thank you so much. I appreciate you chiming in. And I so much appreciate those who are on Facebook who are watching me as well. So let's kind of go into where I'm at and what I wanted to talk about, which is Juneteenth. Let's watch a video and let's get a perspective of how everyone across the country is celebrating Juneteenth and how it's affecting our communities. Hopefully you can see this video. I want to double check because sometimes it'll let you see and sometimes it don't. Hold on a second. Okay. La 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 la. Okay.
We want to continue the conversation. We've been talking about this story all week, but now that Juneteenth is officially a federal holiday, we want to continue the conversation of what this day means in 2021. So to help us do that, we're bringing in Associate Professor of Political Science at Emory University, Andra Gillespie. Welcome to the show, Professor. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking. So for those who may not know too much about the history, give us a little context into the significance of June 19th.
Well, as you've mentioned before, Juneteenth marks the day that slaves who were in Texas who had not heard about the Emancipation Proclamation or heard about the end of the Civil War were informed that they were in fact free. So Juneteenth has long been celebrated in Texas as a way for slaves to celebrate their emancipation. And increasingly over the last few years, African Americans around the country have used this as a day to mark the beginning of their freedom. So their freedom from chattel slavery and, of course, that long march towards full equality that we're still on today. It's gotten increasing notice in the last year as a result of the protests for racial justice that were sparked by the murder of George Floyd. And there had long been efforts in Congress to try to get a recognition for Juneteenth. So there were states, especially after last year, that had adopted Juneteenth as a holiday. Many businesses were increasingly adopting Juneteenth as a holiday and paid time off for their workers. And what President Biden signed into law yesterday is going to make it a federal holiday. So all the implications that we would see for things like Veterans Day and Martin Luther King Day will apply to Juneteenth as well.
And it's fascinating what you mentioned there in the beginning. I think a lot of people would be surprised to know that, hey, back in the day, if it was said that slavery is over, that doesn't mean, boom, it's all done just like that. We're talking a very long time. Information didn't just travel the way it did today. So there was a long time where people actually were still, unfortunately, enslaved, even though slavery had been abolished. So we're talking like years.
Yes. I mean, and we should also keep in mind that these slave owners had no incentive to tell their formerly enslaved people that they were in fact free. I mean, so we have to understand sort of what the incentives were, what the information costs were, and what the channels were that look very different than today. One of the things that I like about Juneteenth is that it is the day where people recognize their freedom. You can, in fact, be free, but if you don't realize it, you're going to live like an enslaved person. And so this is the day that Blacks in Texas realized their freedom and they were able to act upon it. And so I think that that's actually a really important lesson for today, that there are ways that people sometimes act enslaved and that they need to seize their freedom and act upon it, to demand their rights and to walk in that freedom. So I hope that that's a lesson that we take from this. I was talking with a friend yesterday, also a political scientist who is from Texas and is a descendant of enslaved Black Texans. And one of the things that she noted, and I hope that we keep this in mind as we go forward, is that this day should not just turn into another Hallmark holiday or another, white sale holiday. So hopefully people keep that in mind as they celebrate the idea of freedom and taking the freedom that's God-given, as opposed to just making it another day for a barbecue or another day for a clothing sale.
Beautifully said. Juneteenth, as you're saying, is about celebrating the end of a very dark chapter in our nation's history and looking forward to the future. You'd think we would have made this a federal holiday earlier. It would have been acknowledged more. But then again, we just saw recently President Biden was the first president to visit Tulsa to mark an anniversary of the Tulsa Race Massacre, the first president to do so. Do you think these two examples say more about, let's say, Joe Biden as a president and his agenda, or does it speak more to where we're at as a country at this moment?
Well, I'll start by saying that I'm not surprised that, it took this long to get federal recognition of Juneteenth. We have to keep in mind that the last federal holiday that was instituted was Martin Luther King Day, which came on in 1986 officially. It's been 35 years. The last two federal holidays were done to acknowledge America's original racial sin, one of the original racial sins, against African Americans. There's still other racial sins that need to be acknowledged against other groups. And we also have to keep in mind that this is, a symbolic effort. It's a very weighty symbolic effort, because when you put the federal government behind it, when you are requiring that the federal government pay people to not work, there is a significant cost involved in this. But there's still much more work to be done with respect to racial progress. And so holidays and other types of symbolic gestures are relatively low cost things that can be done to acknowledge the racial history of the United States. There's still other important substantive work to be done. And so we applaud the efforts of people like Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas, who has been advocating for Juneteenth to be a federal holiday for a number of years. But we should also note that she and other members of Congress and other members of state and local legislatures and activists around the country are also working and still need to work for substantive legislation. So if we think about the bills that are currently stalled in Congress right now, so the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, if we think about the For the People Act, if we think about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, changes that would be done to revise the Voting Rights Act to make pre-clearance actually real again after it was gutted in Shelby County versus Holder. Those are the things that are going to be more meaningful and more impactful in African-American lives. And those are going to be the things that will be used to help narrow the inequality gaps and to help ameliorate the injustices that still persist in America today.
Professor, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving us context. This is such an important issue. So again, thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's discuss this. Hold on one second. Okay, so this is the problem I have with this. This is a huge problem I have with this. There's no clarification. So I'm going to clarify some of these bills that are put into place, that are put into laws supposed to acknowledge, identify, celebrate. You can use all these different terminologies and words, but what it does not do is empower. It doesn't allocate any money. There's no leverage given towards Black people other than to acknowledge Juneteenth Day as a national holiday. And a national holiday means that people can get off work for free. And yes, they are going to definitely go ahead and marketize. She said it in a different way. I'm going to call it marketize. What does marketize mean? Okay, now you're going to go to the store and you can see everything Juneteenth t-shirts, party favorites, Juneteenth books, Juneteenth. The other people are making money off of this. But they're not clarifying Juneteenth is not, write this down, get your handy dandy notebook. Juneteenth is not a Black holiday that was just signed into law. Juneteenth is an American holiday that was signed into law, okay? Because Juneteenth had to do with the emancipation, had to do with the fact that Black people in this country that contribute. And let's talk about a clarification of Black, because we have two words that have been miscued and it's being twisted in this country, the word Black and people of color. Because if you take people like Kamala wannabe Black Harris, she says she's a Black woman. So if you don't do your homework, and it's funny when I go to people and I say, well, this woman's not Black. And they go, oh, no, she's Black. She's Black. I said, she's not. She's from India because her parents are from India. And if you look at her family and see her family function, this woman was not a woman that had grits, fried chicken. Now she might have went ahead, and what she did do is she had gone to a black university, right? She went to a black university and she was able to hang around black women and black people. But when we talk about black people, let me show you real quick so you won't think I'm just rambling. I had to go find that photo. Okay, so here we go. This is your new president, right? This is a black family. This is the new black family in 2021. In the chat room, is this a black family? Type Y for yes and N for no. In the chat room, as I describe this family is from India. They said the first black South Asian woman to become vice president of the United States. First black. Okay, does this mother look black? No, she's from India. Oh, but surely her father is Jamaican. Okay, but are these people that you see here descendants of American chattel slaves? Put in the chat room Y or N. Okay, but this is the new, look at this word right here, the first black. This is the black family. This is how they are rearranged and restructured history. So first of all, when you go talk to people about black, you have to clarify what is black in America today. This is black. There's another problem that you have right now. It's a word called people of color. So if I were to type in, and I'm going to go over here and just do it from here instead of having it, because let's see, people. If you type in people of color, right? What is the definition of people of color? Here it is. Here's your definition of people of color.
In the United States, people of color include African Americans, Asian Americans, Native Americans, Pacific Islander Americans, multiracial Americans, and some Latino Americans, though members of these communities may prefer to view themselves through their cultural identities rather than color-related terminology.
Now, what you know is I typed in people of color, and they gave me person of color. They want to correct me. But let me tell you, I'm going to correct Wikipedia. Wikipedia is wrong because this is a new terminology, the person of color. They are people in this country who have birth certificates that say one thing. It says, let me show you. Hold on, let me just go visit this one. I'm going to backtrack. I want you to see these birth certificates of these people. I want you to look at this woman. Okay, no, that's not it. Hold on, that's not it. I know I saved that one. There are birth certificates. Let's go. This one looks kind of older. That say that black people are colored on their birth certificate. Now, my mother's birth certificate said color. Let's see. I'm looking for one of the older ones. That one does not. See, they've changed it. Okay, mine says Negro, but there are people on their birth certificate that says colored. Now, type yes or no if anybody knows what I'm talking about as I show you these birth certificates. Okay. Because back then they used to say, what color are you? You black or you white? That's why I told you. See how this one right here says black, white? But my mother's birth certificate, which I'm going to have to probably bring out, it says colored. Okay? These old birth certificates that you ain't seeing on this line. Again, everything that is online, so that you have clarification, everything that is online does not ramify the truth. And that's the problem I have with this online stuff. So people of color are descendants of Negro slaves, of chattel slaves. Now, let's clarify what a black slave of Juneteenth is, right? Because we're talking about Juneteenth. We're talking about understanding why we're going to celebrate this holiday or this new encompass holiday that is about to commence, right? Oh, we got a holiday that now we all can go to and do Juneteenth. Juneteenth is an American holiday. It is not a black holiday, even though blacks celebrate it. The disappointing part of America is most blacks and white people who watch and listen, don't understand American history. They don't understand the long progression changes of how we came into place, all right? Because if we're going to talk about slavery, we have to talk about the type of slave that is out there and how these slaves are labeled. Because most people don't realize that slaves were commodity. They were goods, trades, and service. That's what black people were. They weren't here to immigrate or migrate here. There's also these new videos coming up showing people, look, according to critical race theory, we're all immigrants. this confusion on that. Let me show you that video. So if I'm not a descendant of slaves, I wasn't brought here as a commodity. I'm an immigrant according to these new stipulations of laws and new stipulations of basically rewriting history. Why are these people trying to rewrite history? And we don't sit back and identify that this woman here, that you see right here, is not black? You tell me that. She's from India. But now we're rewriting history. Let's look at this.
It's become the latest divide in race relations. States across the country are trying to get it out of schools, but there is little evidence that it's even being taught. It's called critical race theory, or CRT, and here's what it means.
Let me clarify something. Critical race theory. This is a theory. This is not facts. This is not history. As far as it's a theory of ideas and ideologies. Prager University is so freaking screwed up. I can't stand your fucking videos. Excuse me for cursing. I just can't, because there's too many twisted sisters in your videos of Jews trying to tell black people or trying to tell conservative Republicans what history is about for black people. Republican white people don't have the right to dictate to Chateau descendants of slaves their own history. I'm sick of that. You need to put a committee together of people to speak up. Every other cultures have that except for us. But let's go back to this critical race theory and how this theory in some parts of the country are rewriting history and saying that black people are immigrants. Juneteenth shows you we weren't immigrants. We were brought here as commodity, and because of the emancipation and after the emancipation and that information getting so late to Texas to clarify that we are no longer slaves, that we are no longer properties and commodities and trades and service in America, we are allegedly at that time becoming free people. And I say that allegedly because there's other things that came into play that dysfunction us. But listen to this video.
Critical race theory is an academic framework that centers on the idea that racism is systemic. It's typically taught in colleges and grad schools, even though some politicians incorrectly argue that it's a subject in K-12 schools. Ever since the murder of George Floyd, there's been an increased discussion on how systemic racism is taught in schools. With only 8% of class time devoted to Black history, many feel that K-12 schools have whitewashed American history, often omitting the contributions and perspectives of people of color. A recent example of this happened in 2015. A 9th grade textbook by McGraw-Hill Education described enslaved Black people from the 1500s to 1800s as workers, next to a map of the United...
Okay, whoa. Did you all see that? Did you all see that? They considered us right here workers. Okay, we were commodity. We were commodity. We weren't workers. We weren't in here like getting checks and going home sleeping at night. We were enslaved. We were beaten. We were bruised. We were raped. Okay, we were ostracized. We were limbs cut off, and goes on and on and on and on and on. How horrible people were treated in this time frame. But for some reason, this new facade of liberalism and this new facade of Americans who are not speaking up against how they're transposing and disposing the truth of this ugly history and how this country was formed. But now we're all Africans, we're workers.
States describing patterns of immigration, implying that enslaved Black people came to America voluntarily. After a Black mother's viral complaint, it was updated.
Okay, so I'm going to stop you right there. So I want to show you. I mean, let me look at my chat room real quick. I really want to go to my chat room real quick. I want to ask the chat room, because I know there's somebody in the chat room that really has these questions about that. Hey, Aaron, thank you so much. Thank you, Earl, for chiming in. I appreciate that. And all those Facebook friends who are watching. And I thank you guys so much for your questions. And, just saying that you visit is addressing. Absolutely. I mean, Trump was in Oklahoma, was in 2020. And it's interesting how these people dip their ponds and their feet in these areas. And for some reason, they don't have clarification of what area they're in. So I just wanted you to realize that we have to have this discussion because government is altering truths. And if we don't have real truths on the matter of knowing where we need to be in this country, because, again, I continue to talk about God, family, and country, and that's what we're discussing today. Okay, so let's go back to that video like I was talking about. Commodity is money, right? So if you have a bunch of black people that were brought here for money, and then all of a sudden they're not money, they were workers. We never were workers. Okay, we worked and never was compensated. We were compensated by getting beat. Do y'all understand that? Do you understand that black people were compensated by getting beat? Here we go.
It's become the latest divide in race relations. States across the country are trying to get it out of schools, but there is little evidence that it's even being taught. It's called critical race theory, or CRT, and here's what it means. Critical race theory is an academic framework that centers on the idea that racism is systemic. It's typically taught in colleges and grad schools, even though some politicians incorrectly argue that it's a subject in K-12 schools. Ever since the murder of George Floyd, there's been an increased discussion on how systemic racism is taught in schools. With only 8% of class time devoted to Black history, many feel that K-12 schools have whitewashed American history, often omitting the contributions and perspectives of people of color.
Let's stop right there. Again, that terminology, people of color. Now, I just showed y'all what they said people of color is. This is not about people of color. People of color or colored people are two different terminology. People of color is an inclusive of other races of people. Latinos, Asians, Armenians, Pakistanians, Ukrainians, maybe Ukrainians because they consider Ukrainians almost white now. So let's start with the darker hued people, Hispanics, or Japanese, Chinese, Pacific Islanders. These are people of color, but a person of color, right? That's people who were born with the name color. They look, see that black girl, how that camera spanned over to her? Because my mother birth certificate says colored. There is no Chinese person who's got a birth certificate that says, oh, I'm a colored person that was born in the 1920s, that were born in the 1940s, that were born in the 1800s. They knew exactly who they were. But for some reason, history is alternate truths. And we've got to educate ourselves, because if we don't, we're going to fail. Let me tell you another thing. Don't Google everything. Go to libraries. Go to old historical areas. Go to garage sales and look up black books, historical books, articles, old newspaper articles, and you'll see them break down the real truths of that era, because you're having the manipulation of history dictated through Wikipedia in liberal America. Let's keep going.
A recent example of this happened in 2015. A ninth grade textbook by McGraw-Hill Education described enslaved Black people from the 1500s to 1800s as workers.
Okay, listen to what she said. This is an article in a new book. Did you see this? Black people were brought as workers. Now, they were brought as workers instead of brought as slaves, as commodity good trades and serviced from Africa. That's what it should say. But it doesn't say that. It says workers. Everybody in the chat room, I want you to type in, were Black people just workers? No, they were raped. They were brought here unwillingly. They were taken away from their families. And then when they were brought here, they were ostracized. They were put down. They were treated unhumane. They were cattle. They were commodities. They were working the land for nothing. From dawn until today, they were pulling limbs out of their bodies. They were raising white children, getting spit upon, beat upon, couldn't drink from the same fountain of water as other white people, had to sit in the back of the bus. I mean, you talk about a culture of indigenous people that were slaves into this country, that the word Black and colored is being twisted so that they can have the same rights or the same latitude of who we are and put us all in the same box of Cracker Jacks. A lie.
Next to a map of the United States describing patterns of immigration, implying that enslaved Black people came to America voluntarily.
We came voluntarily, and we are patterns of immigration. Black people, write this down, are not immigrants. Black people are not immigrants who are descendants of chattel slaves. Let me clarify that. Now remember, we're talking about Juneteenth, and we're talking about the people of Juneteenth in America. This is American history that's being altered, saying that we all are immigrants. So when they embrace and say those terms, it is a lie. We were not all immigrants. When you're not brought here willingly, when they stack you on a ship and layer your body on top of somebody else, do you think those people immigrated here? No, they came unwillingly, unwantedly, and were and basically erased those people culture hair. They shaved the black women's head. They told them they couldn't speak their language anymore, privately or publicly, and they made those people learn English. And if you start to speak your own language, if they heard it, they tell the master and they beat you for it. They erased in every aspect your identity and your entity. That's how mean white America, or how mean America was at that time.
After a black mother's viral complaint, it was updated. The writings that formed critical race theory date back to the 1970s. Late Harvard law professor Derek Bell and other legal scholars found that civil rights laws and legal victories have been unsuccessful in ending racial injustice. The goal of critical race theory is to...
Okay, I want to stop right here. I want to go back to this lady. I don't know if I can. Hold on, let me hide this. It was... I don't want to go. I don't really want to go into that.
Voluntarily, after a black mother's viral complaint.
Okay, she went viral in 2015, and they had to correct that. I want us all to go viral and start complaining when we see things out of pocket. When they see, this is what they're teaching your children. They're teaching your children. I want to show you this portion of it. They're teaching your children the patterns of immigration and the patterns of immigration that black people are immigrants and when they're not. They're changing your name to workers. Now, are you going to continue to allow that and not have clarification of that? That's another part of the problems in this country. We continue to let these people rewrite history and not have a true clarification of it. Let's move on. I want to talk about the fact of what Juneteenth is and how it's contribute and the good and the bad of it. When we have to understand that the type of people who went through slavery and what it encompassed and where they are today. But I want to go a little bit more, just be patient with me, a little bit more of, so that those who might have just chimed in, a little bit of more of Juneteenth.
What is Juneteenth? Juneteenth is the oldest known celebration commemorating the ending of slavery in the United States. President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing enslaved Africans in the United States.
Okay, I'm going to stop and break this down because I don't want to go back to the speed again. Again, we're freeing the American slaves, the chattel American slaves. That was chattel. Now, when you look at chattel, ooh, I'm sorry. Where's that at? Okay, when we use this word chattel, slaves. Okay, what is a chattel slave? What is a chattel? Let me let you know what that, because you hear people say chattel slave. I don't know what the heck that means, right? Let me help you out.
LAW, an item of property other than real estate. Noun, chattel personal, plural noun, chattels personal, noun, chattel real, plural noun, chattels real.
Okay, so this was what chattels were. These were the people that Lincoln freed, so that we have clarity. We're not talking about Indians. We're not talking about Jamaicans. We're not talking about people from the Caribbean islands. Let's clarify this. Okay, we're not talking about people from Belize. We're talking about descendants of American slavery.
Chattel slavery means that one person has total ownership of another. There are two basic forms of chattel: domestic chattel, with menial household duties, and productive chattel, working in the fields or mines.
Okay, so you had two types of Negroes, the one in the house and the one in the field, right? In the chat room, am I right? Put yes, type Y in the chat room. Somebody type Y in the chat room, meaning yes, that's true. I understand that. So when you hear people say a chattel slavery, that's talking about descendants of American slavery, okay? When we're talking about, this is what Lincoln freed. So when people come into this country from Africa or other countries and they want to say, oh, we're all black, we're all the same, I done showed you that's not the right people. This is a specific group of people for Juneteenth.
In 1862, and the 13th Amendment passed Congress, officially abolishing the institution of slavery in 1863. But it would take...
Okay, 1863 was when the emancipation, y'all need to know these dates, write that down. 1863 is when the emancipation that Lincoln signed in office where blacks were freed, right? So Lincoln was the president and the vice president was Andrew Johnson. At that time of politics, we don't have it the way it is today. Lincoln was a Republican. Andrew Johnson was a Democrat. Okay, nobody does the conspiracy of thinking, I think that he was part of why Lincoln is taken out, because they couldn't understand how you going to take that free slave away. Could you imagine someone in your house cleaning every day, cooking for you every day, working your land every day for nothing other than having an opportunity to live for free? Can you believe that? And then all of a sudden it gets taken away from you. You have a lot of angry people. Let's keep going.
Years for word to spread. On June 19, 1865, Union soldiers led by Major General Gordon Granger landed at Galveston, Texas, with the news that the Civil War was over and the roughly 250,000 enslaved people there were now free.
Can you imagine 250,000 people? Texas, they knew this thing was over with. Now they're gonna tell you whatever, but I'm gonna tell you my perspective of it. They knew this thing was over with. They said, "Oh, it took a long time for." You heard that man tell that other lady, "Oh, it took a long time for the word to get spread." Okay, it took a long time. You gonna tell me when you can take a horse, a buggy, or whatever to get that information over to Texas that the war is over with? Instead, they let that war continue on because that was part of that South, right? That's that free money that had to end. This is called enslaved free money gone. That's what these white people will earn. And they had to let it go. But for almost 2.5 years before they found out, oh my God, they're free. So if they are free, what is that? That is the day of true Independence Day.
The orders read, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with the proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves, and the connection heretofore existing between them becomes that between employer and hired labor. The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes and work for wages. They are informed that they will not be allowed to collect at military posts."
The freedmen are advised to remain quietly at their present homes. That's the slaves. When you heard freedmen, the freedmen we were freedmen. That's what they became, even the free people, freedmen. That's reverting to black people. Let's keep going.
And that they will not be supported in idleness, either there or elsewhere. You might be wondering why it took so long to spread the word. General Robert E. Lee surrendered in April 1865, but Union troops didn't arrive until June. The Emancipation Proclamation only freed enslaved Africans in the Confederate States liberated by Union troops, and that didn't include Texas. Though slaves were lawfully freed, they were far from free. Many were even punished for trying to take advantage of their new rights. One former slave recalled seeing people shot and hanged after trying to escape to freedom, and another shared an account of being asked to work another 6 years and being whipped just like she was before. Even though the newly freed in Texas didn't receive the full benefits of freedom, they turned the day into a celebration. June 19th was coined Juneteenth, a blending of the words June and 19th. Every year, Juneteenth became a chance for people to get together with family members, measure progress against freedom, and teach rising generations the importance of self-improvement. They would read the Emancipation Proclamation, hear sermons, share meals, and play games. And many of those same traditions carry on today in Juneteenth celebrations across the country. Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday in 1980. Since then, 46 other states and the District of Columbia have recognized Juneteenth as a state holiday or holiday observance. Although not a federal holiday, many global companies like Twitter, Square, Nike, and Lyft have made the day a company holiday in the wake of protests to end systemic racism sparked by the death of George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Today, more than 150 years after celebrations began, June 19th is about remembering the past and moving toward a future that involves an absolute equality of personal rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. Juneteenth, a celebration of freedom and the fight for its fulfillment.
I thought that was a good video. It really was, because what it did was it clarified Juneteenth in a way that we all may not be understanding because we don't know American history. Let me go into the chat room real quick, and then I'm going to keep going on with some more videos. Let's see, African people, not our friends or families. Okay, I'm not going to criticize African people. I think this is about American history. And the problem I have with some people who may be African descent, Armenian descent, I'm going to say Armenian, I'm going to throw them in there. Let's say like India descent, like Kamala, want to be Black Harris and all of those kind of people. Everybody wants to say they are a person of color and Black, and so they want to claim these Black holidays as their holidays. And they know deep inside in their hearts it's not. It's just not. So for us not to understand that there's a lot of people that don't understand FBA people. Okay, Black families, Black people, family Black first. They don't understand American Black history. And because of that, because they don't have a clarification of that, they just want to be connected. But if more people were like that woman you saw in that video who criticized that book, who said that we were workers and really wanted that change, they'll change it. Because there's always ways that they are rewriting history. I want to encourage you to do something. I want to encourage you to go to old libraries, look for old doctrine, find books of the 1800s, and start posting and showing truths of what happened. Old articles are also beneficial to understand a clarification. But if we're just going to do the lazy route, which is Wikipedia on our phone, if we're going to do the lazy route and not talk to some of our elders, so many of you guys right now have grandparents who were living during those times, who were part of the civil rights movements, Black and white, who have a better perspective or a different perspective that you're not finding online. I think that would give you comfort. But this is the part that doesn't comfort me. I have a problem with Juneteenth, because the problem with Juneteenth and comparing Juneteenth to Dr. King is two different things. Dr. King was a civil rights activist and a pastor and a great leader. That has nothing to do with the emancipation. That has nothing to do with Juneteenth. You just heard an explanation of this. But the problem with some of these Juneteenth events, and one of them I went to today, they did this long dissertation of Dr. King and how we all are dreamers. And we all have a dream that one day we can all come together. This is not about coming together for a nation or cultures of people. This is about a clarification of American history, period. That's all it is. This is just American history, where Black people at one point who were in this country as chattel slaves, the descendants of American slaves are here, who were not free, were clarified and an understanding that they became free on June 19th, right? So at that point, everyone had the knowledge. This is about a date of recognizing the full knowledge of where the country was at that point. And because of that, the Blacks who are descendants of slaves, we celebrate that. That is our 4th of July. Now, there's another controversy where a lot of white people get mad when they say, well, that's not 4th of July. What? 4th of July is Independence Day, right? We're talking about 1776. But those laws of 1776 did not apply to Black people. We were still slaves. We were still used. We were free. We were still free commodity. We were still a distorted country of ideas and ideologies, but we were free from England, right? We were a colony of people who were free from England. But the Blacks who came in 1619, who were chattel slaves from the Dutchmen, who came over here, were brought because they said, how can we build this fast? These white people are like, it's hot as hell out here. This land is hard. Our bodies can't do all this. Well, do like you see with these other enslaved people. Let's take these slaves like other countries. Remember, there were Black slaves in other countries before 1619. You can go back to the 1400s. And if you go to the African American Museum and you go down to the bottom of it, they talk about that. But there's a lot of stuff that they don't talk about when it comes to African American descendants of slaves in our contribution. We were builders, we were creators, we were innovators, we were inventors, and we still are. But nobody talks about the invention side of how we impacted and elevated America. Because America was the one that everyone was scared of, because we were moving so fast, because we had this free labor. We had this free labor, and they still partly use this as free labor today. Anybody see someone says, teach, girl, teach. Dr. Shirley, I like that. Thank you so much. It was on my heart today, and I just said, I'm so tired of all these fraudulent information out here. Folks need to do their own damn homework. I said, you know what? Let me just go ahead and do this video and make it clear. Okay, so let's go back to Juneteenth. And now that Juneteenth has been signed by your president, because I did not vote for this man. I didn't vote for this man. This man called President Biden. I want to show you something that you want when laws are put in place. Write this down. Everybody needs money. Write that down. That means everybody needs money. But the problem is people don't realize that just because a bill is signed into law, that does not commemorate any money allocated towards it. If you're going to do Juneteenth Day and celebrate Juneteenth on all these broke-ass streets called Dr. Martin Luther King throughout the country, yes, I did say that, broke-ass streets, and we'll do a video because I've done them in the past. I'm showing you these Dr. King streets all over that nobody white wants to be living on those streets. Let's talk real talk. And then they don't want to allocate any money towards businesses towards those streets, and they don't want to allocate any money for these holidays, Dr. King's Day, or now the Juneteenth Day. What good is it? Because all you're going to do is get a free day off of work, and then you're going to see all of it mediatized and basically profitized by having all these little trinkets and stuff you can buy in the store. See, there's no money allocated for events of history. It is important that we as Americans know our own history, but if you're not going to fund it to create clarification, you're just patronizing a black bunch of people. Everybody's talking about, look what Joe Biden signed in office. This was a bipartisan bill, people, that had to go through the process. This was not an executive order. Let me say that again. This was a bipartisan bill that was put into office that did not have to do with an executive office. That means your president, that black president y'all wave and yell and love so much, he never put this in place. He could have done an executive order, but guess what he didn't do? Clinton could have did an executive order, and guess what he didn't do? Trump could have did an executive order, and guess what he didn't do? I'm throwing everybody on the bus, okay? But what you did have was you had people in Congress who got together and said, hey, we need to put this in the law. Let's break that down. I really want you to have clarity on that, because if we don't realize that this was a bill put on the table, and this man, if Trump was in office, he would have to sign it too, and then Trump would be claiming the credit. But Biden's going to claim the credit because he's the president, right? Let's keep it going.
In honor of the recognition of Juneteenth as a federal holiday, the Law Library of Congress would like to commemorate its legislative history. The Juneteenth National Independence Day Act passed the Senate by unanimous consent on June 15, 2021, and the House on June 16, 2021, and was signed into law as Public Law 11717. Juneteenth, celebrated on June 19th, was first celebrated in Texas in 1865. Though all enslaved people were declared free as of January 1, 1863, by President Lincoln in the Emancipation Proclamation, this did not end slavery in the nation. Furthermore, while General Robert E. Lee surrendered in April 1865, federal troops, led by Major General Gordon Granger, did not arrive in Galveston, Texas, until June 19, 1865. Granger issued General Order No. 3, informing the people of Texas that all enslaved people were now free. The 13th Amendment, ratified later that year, officially declared enslavement unconstitutional. The Texas state legislature passed a law officially recognizing Juneteenth in 1979. Today, 48 states formally recognize Juneteenth as a holiday. There were multiple bills prior to 2021 that sought to federally recognize Juneteenth. Representative Barbara Rose Collins was an advocate for Juneteenth during her congressional terms. She was the first to introduce a bill for the United States to formally recognize Juneteenth. Her bill, recognizing the end of slavery in the United States and the true day of independence for African Americans, was the first to propose federal recognition of Juneteenth. Juneteenth was also a point of congressional debate in recent years. In June 2018, a resolution designating June 19, 2018, as Juneteenth Independence Day in recognition of June 19, 1865, the date on which slavery legally came to an end in the United States, was introduced by Senator Roger F. Wicker. Another bill, Juneteenth National Independence Day Act, was introduced by Representative Sheila Jackson Lee in June 2020. Jackson Lee also introduced resolutions in both 2019 and 2020 to recognize Juneteenth Independence Day. Senator John Cornyn introduced similar resolutions in 2019 and 2020. For the first Juneteenth as a federal holiday, we are proud to share the holiday's legislative history, including information about the members of Congress who worked to accomplish this goal. Happy Juneteenth.
Okay, I want to bring some things to highlight to the table. First of all, this is a bipartisan bill that they are signing into law. So let me clarify that, because the media is going to tell you Biden signed a bill to recognize descendants of slaves that's going to help Black people. This ain't doing nothing to help Black people in this current situation. I'm going to explain that to you too. Again, this new law in place is not going to do anything to financially or rectify how Blacks are treated or how Blacks are living in America. It only identifies history and what it consists of. This is an American holiday. So let's clarify that. Also, this is a bipartisan holiday. Barbara Ross Collins is a what? What party is she with? She's a Democrat. She's the one they just said recently, right? You heard them say recently. She's the one that put it on the table. You heard that, right? We watched that. Hold on, let me go back. I mean, that's important to identify that this is a bipartisan bill. Hold on. I'm having fun because I got to go through my notes again. And I think that's the part that we don't have clarification about this bill. This bill also right here, this is it right here. 17-117, right? This particular bill, so that you have clarity on it, this particular bill doesn't have any money behind it. So let me get it straight. You're going to put something in place that don't have no money behind it. That crap drives me nuts. Hold on. I got to go back to my history. Doggone it. No. Nope, that's the one about that one. Hold on. Let me fix this. There's no money behind this bill. So now you're going to put a bill into law that doesn't have any money that's going to help Black people. So why are we putting this bill out there? Oh, we want to recognize history. I'm going to tell you how liberal media is going to perform this and how white people are going to look at this. Oh, that's a Black holiday. They gave them another holiday. This is not a Black holiday. This is history. I'm trying to let you know this is historical history that we have on the table right now. And the problem is there's no money allocated to it. And unless you have money allocated that's going to make the people and have a clarification of bettering the people, we're not going to do better in this country. We're just not. Because what we've learned over time is that there are people in this country who are able to benefit and get money because they get executive orders. There's a difference between some of these bills that don't get pushed, but executive orders that drive money away from people, like people who really need it, Black and white people, not just white people, but Black and white people that really need money. They're not driving money to help those people. No, they're not doing that. What they're doing is giving money to basically fund and empower these people to leverage against you in your own communities. And unless you understand that, you will never get ahead. Unless you understand that we have situations right now in this country where these people are empowered and you're not empowered, you're going to fail. Okay, I found the article. Oof. Hold on one second. Let's get back to that. Okay. That's another thing. I don't want to click out because it might not come back up again. You can do your own homework on this. I'm just going to read through it. Okay, so we see that Barbara was the first one, right? Then you go here. Robert F. Wicker is a Republican. So here you have a Democrat. Y'all see that? Look it up. Barbara is a Republican, a Democrat, excuse me. Roger F. Wicker is a Democrat. Jackson Lee, who's not a descendant of slaves, is a Democrat. From my understanding, somebody can correct me. That's what the word said on the street. John, is it Corning? Forgive me for saying his name wrong. Anyway, this senator, he's a Republican. So this is considered a bipartisan bill that turns into law. Okay, we got that clarified. Now what I want to clarify is this. There is no money in this little bitty bill right here. There's no money allocated towards events. There's no money allocated to boards. There's no money, meaning boards of committees to be on to educate about the historical ramifications of this time frame. This is only smoke and mirrors to make you be excited about Biden, who can't ride a bicycle. That's all this is about. This is about this man about to ride a bicycle who stopped the bike and couldn't stand up straight, because we all know he's got balance and equilibrium issues. But then again, there's everybody who's claiming they never voted for him. Okay, I digress. Anyway, I want you to see there's no money in this bill. I want you to realize when you go to the White House, y'all see this? It's called the White House website, and they want to talk about Juneteenth Day. Now, I'm gonna let it read, and I want you to listen to it and what they talked about, what it consists of. Now, y'all see, why do you keep letting this read? I want you to read this because I want you to realize there's no money allocated about this law.
After the Union Army captured New Orleans in 1862, slave owners in Confederate states migrated to Texas with more than 150,000 enslaved black persons. For 3 years, even after President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, enslaved black Americans in Texas remained in brutal bondage, immorally and illegally deprived of their freedom and basic dignity. On June 19, 1865, over 2 years after President Lincoln declared all enslaved persons free, Major General Gordon Granger and Union Army troops marched to Galveston, Texas, to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation and free the last enslaved black Americans in Texas. Those who were freed from bondage celebrated their long overdue emancipation on June 19th. Today, our nation commemorates Juneteenth, a chance to celebrate human freedom, reflect on the grievous and ongoing legacy of slavery, and rededicate ourselves to rooting out the systemic racism that continues to plague our society as we strive to deliver the full promise of America to every American. This Juneteenth, we are freshly reminded that the poisonous ideology of racism has not yet been defeated. It only hides. Our nation continues to mourn the 10 lives senselessly taken in Buffalo, New York, and grieve for the families who have lost a piece of their soul. As we confront the awful reality of yet another gunman massacring innocent people in the name of hatred, racism, and fear, we must meet this moment with renewed resolve. We must stand together against white supremacy and show that bigotry.
Oh my God, I gotta stop. Oh my God, I gotta stop. Oh my God, I gotta stop. Let me tell you what I gotta backtrack because there's so much distorted truths and lies on this website that I gotta stop. I gotta stop. Because anybody know me, I gotta stop. I gotta break this down. They continue to say this. Let me tell you another lie. Let's break these lies down. I'm gonna break these lies down. Now some of you people might say, Shirley, this is hypothetical. You know, again, alleged truths, alleged lies. Okay, this is my perspective. Okay, this is just a personal perspective.
On June 19th, 1865, over 2 years after President Lincoln declared all enslaved persons free, Major General Gordon Granger and Union Army troops marched to Galveston, Texas, to enforce the Emancipation Proclamation. On June 19th, 1865, over 2 years after President Lincoln declared all.
It took them 2 years to get from the White House. 2 years. I didn't say 2 months. I didn't say 6 months. It took them 2 years. Oh, but the reason why is because message traveled so long. Did you see that other video where it said 250 people they had to release? The white people didn't want that money done. They were trying to make quotas. If you look at that back in June, they were probably trying to make that third quarter money. And they said, we're just going to wait. We're going to wait. We got to get two more years. We got to get 8 quarters out of these people. We got 8 good quarters of cropping and cotton and corn out of these Negroes. We're going to still beat them and whip them. And then when they're free, they're going to come back and work for us for nothing. We're going to still have them enslaved. But that's a whole nother history lesson I'm not going into. So if y'all think I believe that this Major Gordon took 2 years because they just all of a sudden got there and that's why the people learned, because the message travels so slow. 2 freaking years. It takes you, I think you could walk faster. If you walked from Washington, D.C. And I'm telling you, look up the history of Frederick Douglass and how he would walk to the state capitol from his home. And if anybody goes to D.C., please go to Frederick Douglass Museum and see how far that man had to walk. Them white people are used to walking, and so were them black people. But these people had horses. They had traveled horses. When they would get those horses and they would gallop and they give it that mail and they would gallop. They would run across the country to get that information as fast as they could. They weren't trying to hurry up. So that's another situation. I don't believe that they didn't know. I think they dragged it out because the one thing, Lincoln was dead, right? And then you had Andrew Johnson, who was a racist white Democrat president after Lincoln died. So no, he had some bets. If you look all that was all tied together. Let me tell you another problem with this. This is on the president website. We're going to talk about systemic racism, and he goes on in this. This is not about systemic racism. This is just history. So why does he have to put systemic racism continue to plague this society? Okay, we know all that, but let's go ahead. Then they talk about Buffalo, New York. What does Buffalo, New York have to do with Juneteenth Day? Well, surely he's talking about systemic racism and he's trying to tie the two together because black people are still being targeted. Well, then what are you going to put every target issue that we encompass, including George Floyd and Sandra Bland and so many others? Are we going to start including them all in the bill when this has nothing to do with today's time? This is just to commemorate the history of Americans as a whole, identifying that black people have freedom just like white people. And that's when everybody knew. That's it. This is not rocket science, but they've got to politicize this and they've got to manipulate this. I don't know if I want to continue on to read this. He says, I'm so glad to sign this bipartisan piece of legislation. Let me let you know this. Over the last year, I'm so proud to sign. This is a bipartisan piece of legislation. So let me clarify again. You're going to hear the media saying Biden signed a bill in place for Black Americans and they should be proud. This is not for Black Americans. This is American history. Biden signed a bill that was already in transition to be signed by bipartisan leaders in this country. It could have been Joe the Monkey who was president at this time, and Joe the Monkey would have to sign unless he vetoed it. But Joe the Monkey wouldn't have vetoed this because Joe the Monkey know that would make him look bad. Instead, Joe Biden said, I'm going to go ahead and sign this bill. So Sleepy Joe said, what the hell? I signed the bill. I can get me some of them Negroes to vote for me who will get nothing because there's no money allocated towards it.
Last year, I was proud to sign bipartisan legislation establishing Juneteenth as our newest federal holiday so that all Americans can feel the power of this day, learn from our history, celebrate our progress, and recognize and engage in the work that continues. Great nations do not ignore their most painful moments. They face them. We grow stronger as a country when we honestly confront our past injustices, including the profound suffering and injustice wrought by slavery and generations of segregation and discrimination against Black Americans. To heal, we must remember. We must never rest until the promise of our nation is made real for all Americans.
Okay, that part was well written. This is the problem with this part, though. Again, they use this word Black Americans. This is not for Black Americans. This is for descendants of chattel slave Americans, okay? This is for Americans who are descendants of American history. So if you're not going to talk about descendants of American, and we're talking about generations, he goes, generations of segregation. Look, we're not talking about segregation. We're talking about descendants who are supposed to reap the benefits of its history. There's no benefit to reap here other than identification of its existence. That's all it is. That's the only benefit you're getting. It's like, oh, I didn't know that. Why? Because they don't teach it in school. Remember, you're being taught in school that we all immigrants and we are workers. I showed you that video. I'm not going back to that. I just want you to understand that. Let's keep going. I'm going to do this in sections because if they make me mad in each section, I'm going to go off.
The emancipation of enslaved Black Americans was not the end of our nation's work to deliver on the promise of equality. It was only the beginning. On Juneteenth, we recommit to our shared work to ensure racial justice, equity, and equality in America. We commemorate the centuries of struggle and progress led by abolitionists, educators, civil rights advocates, lawyers, activists, trade unionists, religious leaders, public officials, and everyday Americans who have brought our nation closer to fulfilling its promise.
I'm going to keep going again. Juneteenth and the emancipation stops right there. All the stuff, that repercussion that they're talking about afterwards is what we're dealing with now. But to understand the clarification and who the people should be identified needs to have a clearer understanding and more broken down understanding. And the fact that they took 2 years saying, well, it took longer time frame for news to travel. I believe that's BS. I believe that there were people who were in the South under Johnson's leadership that wanted checks back, and they were pissed knowing that I'm going to lose these Negroes because of Lincoln. Oh, hell no, I need some more time. I got quotas to meet. They looking at their books and they said, my commodity numbers are off. I'm not going to get my cotton. I'm not going to get my corn. So they dragged this shit out 2 more years. That's what this is about. And so he says, my good friend. Now, again, why are you talking about your friends? You're supposed to be representing the president, but I mean, the United States. But let's keep going.
As my good friend, the late Congressman Elijah Cummings, said, our children are the living messengers we send to a future we will never see. Together as a nation, let us continue our work together to build a country we are all proud to pass along to our children, one where the foundational promises and ideals of America ring true for every child and every family.
This inclusiveness on Black culture is evasive and it is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why it's wrong. Because I'm going to show you other cultures of people who don't identify themselves as Black or Negroes or descendants of slaves that have money and power allocated to them. I'm going to show you that in this video, so stay with me and be patient. But I wanted to read everything on this White House website of what they're saying. And then he says, I go ahead and I witness that I'm going to go ahead and sign you Negroes, and you're going to get a nice new holiday. And that's the end of it. Sign your president. Okay, let's move on. I want you to understand that other cultures of people, stop this. I want you to understand, I know many of you guys are in the chat room, that other cultures of people are benefiting off of civil rights, are benefiting on having lobbyists, people who knew how to write pieces of legislation, people who know how to put pieces of legislation asking Black people for money. Asking Congress and asking government for money for their people. The people like, he said, Cummings, Maxine Waters, Karen Bass, Kamala wannabe Black Harris, Sheila Jackson's, and they can go on and on and on and on. These people and the older ones have been in office and so programmed to have you manipulated in your mind that you're getting something when you're not. In the meantime, these other cultures of people have gotten together and they have created coalitions, they've created lobbyists, they've created attorneys and groups put together to identify empowerment positions in government so that you don't get the money and they get the money first. When you see government grants and proposals that say minority, that was supposed to go to Black people. But because another word that's been twisted, another twisted sister word, like colored people or persons of color, another twisted sister word that basically manipulates Blacks from descendants of slaves, have altered history for us. So minorities, that money is allocated. Shout out to Eric Coffin on YouTube, where you guys can learn about a lot of grants that offers to minority. That means that we have to go in as a minority, which means you're competing against white women, gays, transgenders, ABCDFG people, and immigrants, illegal immigrants. You're in the muddle. You don't have its own entity. But guess what? These other folks, they coming up off of you, and you don't even know it. You don't even know it. So let me keep going. I know y'all want me to go in the chat room like I'm just so full of fire. I'm just pissed because I'm just like, okay, I'm so tired of dumb folks. No offense. I know some of y'all real smart out there, but others don't even get it. Okay, so here's an executive order. This executive order of Pacific Islanders, let me go, that's the one of color. This one actually was put into place by Clinton. Okay, this bill was put into place by Clinton. This is called an executive order that has to do with equal rights and justice for what? Asian Americans, Hawaiianers, and Pacific Islanders. Okay, this is an act put in place to help these people. Okay, and it's authorized by the president. Okay, I've got to let it be read because I have to break it down to you. So be patient. I want you to learn something today from all of this. I'll play it in parts because I know I'm going to get mad in between. Let's go.
By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. Policy. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander, AA and NHPI individuals and communities are irrefutable sources of our nation's strength. These communities have molded the American experience, and the achievements of AA and NHPI communities make the United States stronger and more vibrant. The richness of America's multicultural democracy is strengthened by the diversity of AA and NHPI communities and the many cultures and languages of AA and NHPI individuals in the United States. Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander communities together constitute the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States and make rich contributions to our society, our economy, and our culture. Yet for far too long, systemic barriers to equity, justice, and opportunity put the American dream out of reach of many AA and NHPI communities. Many AA and NHPI individuals face persistent disparities in socioeconomic, health, and educational outcomes. Linguistic isolation and lack of access to language assistance services continue to lock many AA and NHPI individuals out of opportunity. Too often federal data collection practices fail to measure, reflect, and disaggregate the diversity of AA and NHPI experiences. These practices contribute to often painful and enduring stereotypes about Asian Americans as a model minority and obscure disparities within AA and NHPI communities. Our nation has also seen again that anti-Asian bias, xenophobia, racism, and nativism have deep roots in our nation. Tragic acts of anti-Asian violence have increased during the COVID-19 pandemic, casting a shadow of fear and grief over many AA and NHPI communities, in particular East Asian communities. Long before this pandemic, AA and NHPI communities in the United States, including South Asian and Southeast Asian communities, have faced persistent xenophobia, religious discrimination, racism, and violence. The federal government must provide the moral leadership, policies, and programs to address and end anti-Asian violence and discrimination, and advance inclusion and belonging for all AA and NHPI communities.
Okay, I'm going to go back. Listen to this part right here, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, for too long, systemic barriers. Okay, let's keep going about right. Yeah.
Yet for far too long, systemic barriers to equity, justice, and opportunity put the American dream out of reach of many AA and NHPI communities. Many AA and NHPI individuals face persistent disparities in socioeconomic, health, and educational outcomes. Linguistic isolation and lack of access to language assistance services continue to lock many AA and NHPI individuals out of opportunity. Too often federal data collection practices fail to measure systemic barriers to equity, justice.
Systemic barriers and equity of justice. Don't you find that interesting? That these people have barriers and equity justice issues, equity justice, equity to America, right? These people have been so positioned in our communities. When you think of the hair industry, that was the black hair industry, and I've showed you these videos that the Koreans came in and built their wealth on the backs of blacks with this hair, and we paid them for it, and now they have a whole area of downtown LA called Koreatown. These cultures of people have come in and segregated themselves and situated themselves through federal funding that lend them help and money to empower them. But here we are excited about a holiday. An executive order circumvents bills and holidays. Let me say that again. Executive order is not a law. It is an executive order commemorated by a president and has to be signed by the next president unless it is turned into a law. So it's a different type of entity in government of how administration can allocate rights and laws into our country. But the difference is it's immediate. It's immediate once it's signed by the president. You had that so-called Negro president who never did any type of legislation. Let me say that again. That had to do with monies allocated in this empowering way that these people have been given to. The opportunity to put American dreams out of reach. They've had the American dream out of reach. Did I just tell you they have built communities for decades in America? So this bill, again, it originated under Clinton. Let's continue on. And then we talk about the lockdown, the language. Okay, we talk about the lack of access to language and services. Wait a minute. How many interpreters do we have when you go to court or you get a ticket? How many interpreters do they have? In California, I think when you go and you go vote, they must have at least almost over 30 to 50 different languages. When you go to court and you have to let them know you don't speak English, and the courts on your tax dollars have to help these people understand what the hell that just happened to them. And then they get leniency because they don't have the language and they feel like they're being discriminated towards. You come in this country, you don't want to learn the language, but we've got to provide interpreters and we've got to provide money and we've got to provide equal justice for you. But now we're talking about descendants of slaves that date back to the 1600s or 1500s or whenever you want to talk about the construction of America. Then we'll do that time frame of 1619 to 1776 when we talk about the development of America. And last time I learned, my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmother didn't have these people standing on the side of them doing that frame of history. Oh, Lord Jesus, let me just keep going. And again, they go into the COVID situation, how they've been discriminated. I'm not going there. Let's keep going. As directed, order, This is the point I want you to get to. Then we talk about the xenophobic and how they're discriminated against. How many black people have been discriminated against? Okay, so then there's talking about sectors. Let's talk about sectors. The Government Advisory Commission of Asian Americans and all them people we just mentioned have a laws in place to protect them. Here we go. We're talking about different departments. The first department has to do with Health and Human Services, right? Then the next one here, let me just let it play, and then I'll break them down for you. Let's do, we'll see, A, B, C. Let's just do just the first A, B. Yeah, we'll stop right here.
A. There is established in the Department of Health and Human Services the President's Advisory Commission on Asian Americans, Native Hawaiians, and Pacific Islanders Commission. B. The commission shall be led by 2 co-chairs, one of whom shall be the Secretary of Health and Human Services, the other of whom shall be the head of an executive department or agency designated by the President. The commission shall provide advice to the President in close coordination with the Deputy Assistant to the President and Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander Senior Liaison on.
Hold the hell up right here. What are you telling me, Shirley? What are we reading right now? You're going to tell me that they are putting 2, not one of these people, 2 co-chairs, one of whom shall be a Secretary of Health and Human Services, making sure that people don't become homeless. That's what they're saying. Making sure that people get free health. That's what they're saying, okay? And the other who will be head of executive department agencies designed by the president. Okay, so they're going to sit down and go in cahoots with the president to make things work for their people. Not 1, but 2. There's no executive order, by the way, in place like this for black people, but y'all got a nice little holiday where now you can have fried chicken greens and black-eyed peas to remember your ancestors, but they won't give you money like they're giving these people to develop their communities.
I. The development, monitoring, and coordination of executive branch efforts to advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities in the United States, including efforts to close gaps in health, socioeconomic, employment, and educational outcomes.
Whoa. They said equity and justice, okay? So they're going to have the police on their side. Equity. They're going to have property rights on their side. Close gaps of health. They're going to have free health care. So they ain't got to put their people homeless on the street. You see any of them homeless on the street? When's the last time you saw a whole bunch of Asian Pacific Islanders, Native Hawaiians put on the street? When have you seen any of these people put on the street like you see descendants of American slavery? Social, economic, employment, and educational outcomes. When they don't even educate people about the American history, and we supposed to be all condoned and happy about this. And now they're going into the bipartisan, former racist, how they've been racist, how they've been discriminated against. And nobody talking about how we've been discriminated against. Did you see that in the policy? No, they weren't talking about, he put in that policy regarding that bill, talking about Buffalo soldiers and how we got shot, how we getting shot. They ain't talked about the homelessness, none of that. They went into a whole different type of way of looking about systemic racism. Do you hear that word, systemic racism, put in here, other than the discrimination of it and the hatred against the, they didn't use hatred when they broke the bills for black people. White people hated black people. You know why they dragged that bill out so long, or the truth of Galveston, to know the real truth so long, so that they can take 2 more years of getting commodity and money off of your back. Instead, that's called hatred of seeing a freed black man, a freedman. That's what they hated. But instead, we're going to use the term when it comes to Asian people and giving them special rights. Oh my God, Jesus, take the wheel. Let's keep going. And again, equity, having stake into this land, rights into this land, and you don't.
Ways in which the federal government can build on the capacity and contributions of AA and NHPI communities to equitable federal funding, grant making, and employment opportunities. The policies and practices to improve research and equitable data disaggregation regarding AA and NHPI communities.
Oh, what part do you not read? Federal funding. Federal funding. Anybody, do we have federal funding that is specific for Black Americans? Because this is contribution to communities of equity federal funding. They don't have laws of an executive order for your people for this, but they got it for them. Now, y'all can go back and read these things yourself. I'm just telling you the truth of how they hide all this stuff, and this is laws in place. And when you say you want something, and then you say you don't make yourself inclusive, and how we need to bring everybody together, I ain't trying to bring nobody together no more. I like to talk about Black people because I'm a descendant of slaves, and if y'all don't like that, then go somewhere else. Because I'm tired of when I scream and yell, when I show you truths, when I show you facts, when I provide you numbers, and y'all just sit up and let
Policies
these
and
people get
practices
this.
to improve language access services to ensure AA and NHPI communities can access federal programs and services, and VA.
Oh, I gotta stop. So they're gonna provide federal funding services paid by tax dollars so these people can have better communication. Well, can you communicate to me how to get these niggas off the street? Can you communicate to me to fix up these Black people who served this country as veterans who never got compensated? Can you give me some communication to understanding how you didn't let these people come to this country and come into Black universities, and now talking about they're going to put Ukrainians in Hampton universities and historical Black colleges, and how they get free housing, free school, and education? I'm going to tell you how. Practice policies improving languages and access is how they're doing it, through federal funding, and you people don't have, you're not upset. This is why I sit back and say, you're not doing videos. Why should I do videos when all this stupidity gets signed in the office, and then we got Black people on YouTube talking about gossip and everything else, and they got crazy numbers. But when people want to hear the real truth, YouTube suppress people like me, suppress people like T West and Phil and a couple of us out here who are trying to help elevate Americans' knowledge of what Black culture goes through. But no, let's elevate the buffoonery of people who are kneeling, and the buffoonery of how Biden and all Black people should support Biden, or celebrities or athletes or pro games. That does not put money in our people. That does not put us in the position of a language, of equity, of justice, or any of that. And I'm just sick of how folks just ain't doing their own damn homework and seeing how these people are getting money and you ain't.
Strategies to increase public and private sector collaboration and community involvement in improving the safety and socioeconomic, health, educational, occupational, and environmental well-being of AA and NHP. Strategies to increase public and private sector collaboration.
Now I want you to notice, they are breaking this thing down. They ain't giving you no damn one paragraph. Do you see how this shit is nothing? This is a nothing. Did you see how they are breaking this down? Private sectors. collaborating, communities involvements, collaborating. That means that there's other people who will give them money, that the government will say, hey, that's a good idea. You think they collaborating with us? Do you ever see anything where you see Pacific Islanders and Asians collaborate? And then they use the terminology, these people are being hated again. Hatred. Hatred goes back to the foundation of America. So when Prager University does videos, hey, Prager University, stop lying, talking about systemic racism and talking about hatred in this country and how we shouldn't say that's part of it or racism. Racism goes back to the foundation because the black people were brought as commodity and they weren't valued as human beings. They were valued as shadow, as lower than a dog, lower than a cat, lower than a cow. That's all they were treated as. That's more than hatred. That's more than hatred. That's a man with no heart. That's a man with no care for his people. What kind of human being? That's unhumane. So when we talk about hatred, black people were unhumane. That's below hatred. And yet these people could come here, increase privatized sectors and collaborate with people and have commissions and have put committee members together. And we can't do that, but they're going to give you a damn holiday.
C. The commission shall consist of 25 members appointed by the president. The commission shall include members who, I, have a history of advancing equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities. C. The commission shall consist of 25 members appointed by the president. The commission shall include members who, I...
Just because you got an elected official that's black, that don't mean they're going to fight for you. Write that down. All black don't mean black. All black people are not for black people. All descendants of slaves are not for black people. All immigrants who are of the African diaspora are not for chattel slaves. You need to write that down because y'all didn't sit back and have Sheila Jackson, that other lady, Barbara Lee, all of these people who've been put into office have not put a 25-member appointment for the president. Now they say, we got the CBC. The CBC doesn't even have an executive order to this ramification broken down for the benefits of descendants of slaves. And by the way, there are white people who are descendants of slaves, and I might do a whole video on that as well. When you talk about white colonists and black people who build these countries and laws and monies that are being allocated, that's why you have a migration movement in this country. Again, I just want to set the record straight so that we have clarification on history. So people say you're being biased. I'm not. I just want you to understand history. This came from this administration. This is their website. This is what they wrote in place to protect these people. So the fact that now you got Juneteenth as a legal holiday, they don't even have a breakdown of all this. And I want you guys later on your own time and merit to go through this. Because what you'll learn is they get more money, they get more equity, they have more committees. I'm not going to go through all this because I want you to know it's nothing but committees and just redundant policies and programs. So in case that they miss something in the first half, they're going to repeat it again. It's just repetitive and repetitively broken down to make sure that they cover the bases.
B. The initiative shall advance equity, justice, and opportunity for AA and NHPI communities by coordinating federal interagency policy and program development efforts to eliminate barriers to equity, justice, and opportunity faced by AA and NHPI communities, including by advancing policies, programs, and initiatives. In developing and implementing such policies, programs, and initiatives, the co-chairs of the initiative and the executive director shall coordinate closely with the deputy assistant to the president and Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander senior liaison to support implementation of a whole-of-government approach to equity and racial justice, as established in Executive Order 13,985. The assistant to the president for domestic policy and the director of the Office of Management and Budget shall coordinate closely with the co-chairs of the initiative and the executive director to ensure that the needs and voices of AA and NHPI communities are considered in the efforts of M.
This part's important. Let me just let it play it out.
My administration to advance equity and civil rights.
To advance equity and civil rights. I'm done. It's like when I'm dropped the damn mics. I'm done. Because if you're going to give domestic policies and direct offices of management and budgets that should coordinate closely with the co-chairmen. 2, I want you to let that sink in. 2, they're going to put 2 people in each one of these departments. So in case they another one missing, another one to catch it. It goes on and on. Equity, you hear the word equity position. You hear the word health, poverty position, facing any poverty position. Now who's got the poverty position right now? Let me play this one for you. Who are the people on the street that got poverty? Black people. They ain't got to worry about that because they got money to help them.
Address the concentration of poverty facing many AA and NHPI communities, including by identifying and addressing disparities in access to safe, affordable housing and homeownership.
I'm done. That's another drop the damn mic. So you got all these people homeless in LA, all these people homeless in New York, all throughout the country who are 80% Black, and they don't have initiatives in order to fix them. But these people were going to make sure they don't become like you descendant of slaves, you stupid Black people. That's how they look at you. And they talk bad in your face, and then they act like they're your friend. They ain't your friend because they don't like you. So you pander to these people because I'm not going to pander to them. I'm not racist, but I know facts. And I also know leverage. And I also know how government empowers people to think they're better than you when they don't even know the empowerment came from people like us who set the presence of why this country is running the way it is. But if we have leaders who don't work in our best interest and not creating legislation to have co-chair positions throughout pieces of legislation to have Black people, what good is it? Now let me keep going. Now this is the part I want you to understand, because you gotta hear this part. This part is like again, too many damn drop the mic issues. Let me go all the way down. See, these people covered their asses with this piece of legislation. You up there happy to get a holiday. A holiday. I got a damn holiday. Why couldn't he sign the office and added this to it instead of talking about shootings and George Floyd? Let's keep going.
C. In addition to the co-chairs, the initiative shall consist of senior officials from the following agencies and offices, designated by the heads thereof.
In addition
the office of the Vice President. 2. The Department of State. 3. The Department of the Treasury. IV. The Department of Defense. V. The Department of Justice. VI. The Department of the Interior. VA. The Department of Agriculture. VI. The Department of Commerce. X. The Department of Labor. X. The Department of Health and Human Services. XI. The Department of Housing and Urban Development. ZI. The Department of Energy. X3. The Department of Education. ZIV. The Department of Veterans Affairs. XV. The Department of Homeland Security. ZV. The Environmental Protection Agency. ZVA. The Office of Management and Budget. ZVI. The Office of the United States Trade Representative. ZIX. The Small Business Administration. XX. The Office of Science and Technology Policy. Z. The National Security Council. ZI. The National Economic Council. XX3. The Domestic Policy Council. ZIV. The Gender Policy Council. XXV. The Council on Environmental Quality. ZV. The White House Office of Cabinet Affairs. ZVA. The White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs. ZVI. The White House Office of Public Engagement. ZIX. The White House Office of Presidential Personnel. XXX. The Social Security Administration. ZXI. The General Services Administration. ZXI. The United States Agency for International Development. XXX3. The Office of Personnel Management. ZXIV. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And XXXV. Other agencies and offices as the President may, from time to time, designate.
I want you to breathe. I want you to breathe. I want to go right back to this one. I want you to breathe. Everything that you read, I want you to read this. In addition to, let me just read it. In addition to, they have other departments for senior officials to the following agencies designated by the head thereof. So they have heads of their culture of people in every one of these damn departments. And y'all happy to get this Negro president and all these Negroes who don't even serve on these policies because they represent states. They represent the United States. They represent cities, city council people. This is not city council people. This is not the water board. This is not the House of Representatives. This is not people of Congress. These are citizens who've been appointed of these people's diasporas to have access to these damn departments. And this is an executive order into place. Money's allocated to them, houses allocated to them, and it goes on and on and on. I got too much to talk about. And this is, again, Joe Biden. But I'm not going to beat Biden up on this because Trump signed the same thing. I'll do that another time. I want you to understand this initiated under Clinton. And what happens is with every president, sorry about this here, with every president, they write these bills into place. Look how long this damn thing is. With every president does some slight alterations, and they either make it better or they twist it a little bit back, but they keep it clear. Let's move forward. Look, here's another one. Oh, look, does this say black? Oh, let me read this to you, Negroes and white people who may be listening to my video. Please click the like button. I put time into doing this research. Y'all can at least like the button. Share the video on groups. Please share the video on groups because I think groups.
Executive Order on White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Hispanics.
Oh, an executive order again. Another executive order. There's no executive order for black people like this. Okay, the policies start off again. Let's talk about these people, these poor people hurting and how they're getting money. I'm not going to play all of it, but I got to show you how the bill has similarities, but still identifies other aspects of these people. Let's go. I know y'all say, oh my God, it's a lot to read. You have to understand this is why you guys are broke, why you don't have money and other people do.
By the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. Policy. Nearly 14 million students in our nation's public elementary and secondary school system and nearly 4 million students in post-secondary education are Hispanic. Hispanic students constitute more than 27% of all pre-kindergarten through 12th grade students and nearly 20% of college students. The nation's future prosperity and global leadership across industries is therefore tied to the success of Hispanic and Latino students. And by the authority vested in me as President by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America.
Oh my God, I gotta stop. Jesus, take the wheel. Shake the wheel, Jesus. I need you to understand how these people are slick. These are slick Willie moves, right? So first of all, they're going to talk about their numbers because we know they are growing in mass numbers because numbers equate to power and position. Write that down. Numbers equate to power and position. Now, you notice how these Hispanics, they put this thing together with their lobbyists and their team, and they learn from them other bills how their bill should be written. Okay? How should our bill be written? First of all, let's identify, we got a lot of numbers here. We got people in school, elementary schools, and And let's continue to talk about, we've got Hispanic leaders throughout the country and the community. Okay, you need to identify that. You need to understand there's schools where education's being taught. They got to identify that. I'm fast forwarding this whole thing. Y'all go back and read it yourself later. Then they go into only saying the percentages of these Latinos that don't have degrees. And then they tagged in with the ABCDFG people. They tag them in so they can grow. This is about them saying, we've got numbers, money, and power. Okay, now remember, you had white and black people. So we were number 2. These people are circumventing white people because white people didn't want us anyway, and they were letting Latinos claim they were white, but that's a whole nother video. I ain't going down there. Do your own damn history. Let's keep going.
At the same time, Hispanic and Latino students face systemic inequitable barriers in accessing a high-quality education and a fair shot at the American dream. Only 40% of Latino children participate in preschool education programs as compared to 53% of their white peers. Due to systemic and historical inequities faced in the classroom, the high school graduation rate for Hispanic students is below the national average. Hispanic students are underrepresented in advanced courses in mathematics and science, and they can face language barriers in the classroom. Only 19% of Latino adults have at least a bachelor's degree compared with 1 in 3 overall, and just 6% have completed graduate or professional degree programs, versus 13% nationally. Further, the lack of availability of adult continuing education courses makes it difficult for many Hispanic adults to further their education. In addition, barriers to equity in education can compound and intersect for Hispanic and Latino students who are women and girls, LGBTQ+ individuals, English language learners, and individuals with disability.
In 2021, we are living times where people lead from a voice of disposition. So I'm always conscious in telling my friends, my children, close people, when you decide to interact with people, and I don't care what race you are or what culture you're from, and their voice is leading from a voice of disposition. Surely, what does that mean? Okay, so someone talks to you, and the first thing they tell you, I'm a Latino. I came here. I had nothing. My family, da 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 da. I'm from Pakistan. I had nothing. And I come here for the American dream. And I want da 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 da. Well, you know how they're able to get it? Through executive orders. They have laid the ground rules in this country. So when these people now come here, they have all these executive order fundings and representatives in office, as well as representatives in appointed positions and committees to allocate monies and funds to help them in their disposition. In this proposal of executive order, they lead from disposition. They show you the power of their numbers. They show you how their children they feel are lack of educated, but the education in America is distorted. That's why people are homeschooling. That's why people are online training their children and seeing how their children are being filtrated by these liberal, progressive, and LGBT and everybody else, not teaching just basic truths of America anymore. We don't know anything about this Black history. That's why Juneteenth, I think, is important. I think the holiday is great, even though there's no money allocated to it. But most of all, if we're talking about language barriers, these people do not want to learn English. So you are put in a disposition of saying, oh, you don't speak Spanish? We're not going to hire you now. Wait a minute, I'm in America. Why do I have to learn all these other cultures of people's languages? I'm going to tell you why. Because the government signed disposition laws like this in place to equity and excellence and economies to give these people opportunities who are not forced to learn this language. They don't force these people to learn this language, because if you do, then you're a racist. Oh, you're racist. You don't want to. These people, they come with nothing. It's hard for them to learn. It's hard for them to advance. No, it's not when you give them everything for free. How is it hard for them? Then they throw in the COVID thing. I'm going to fast forward to this because it's a section I want to get to. Then the White House initiative talks about education and excellence. Do you know in California, they have classes that are half English and half Spanish? So your English student is not getting a full perspective of education or American history anymore, because we have to cater and we have to now separate our structure of education to cater to all these other cultures of children who are not learning English first. That should be the first thing you do. If you ain't learned this language, then we ain't gonna teach you. That's how I feel. Learn the language, then we can teach you about America and its history and what it benefits. But that's not how education is structured today. It is divided by different parts and different categories to benefit these people and have an educational equity advancement. They love that word equity. Keep that word in mind. Then they go and talk about high school basis and how education is in place and how they want to get into their degrees. But this is the part I want you to listen to again. This has to do with the Latinos, right? Right? We're talking about the Latinos. I'm going to stop right here. Let's start.
D. The initiative shall establish a federal interagency working group, which shall be convened by the executive director and shall support the efforts of the initiative. The interagency working group shall collaborate regarding resources and opportunities available across the federal government to increase educational and economic opportunities for Hispanics and Latinos. I. The interagency working group shall consist of senior officials, designated by the heads of their respective departments, agencies, and offices
Don't
from
this
the
sound familiar?
following: A, the Department of State;
Sound
B,
familiar?
the Department of the Treasury; C, the Department of Defense;
Sound familiar?
D, the Department of Justice; E, the Department of the Interior; F, the Department of Agriculture; G, the Department of Commerce; H, the Department of Labor; I, the Department of Health and Human Services; J, the Department of Housing and Urban Development;
Sound familiar?
K, the Department of Transportation; L, the Department of Energy; M, the Department of Education; N, the Department of Veterans Affairs; O, the Department of Homeland Security; P, the White House Office of Management and Budget; Q, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy; R, the Small Business Administration; S, the White House Domestic Policy Council; T, the White House Gender Policy Council; U, the White House Office of Public Engagement; V, the National Science Foundation; W, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration; X, the United States Agency for International Development; and Y, such additional executive departments, agencies, and offices as the Secretary may designate.
They give these people positions of power in agencies just as they did with the specific islanders, right? We go down here. It's a repeat. It's just restructured. That's all it is. It's the same thing. See, it's the same thing. They go through the Department of Housing, and that's the same thing as of Small Business Administration. It's the same office. You know, there's a couple of things maybe a little bit different, but yeah, that's the same departments. They added technology on theirs. Yeah, they had technology too. It's the same thing. It's a copy and paste. That's all this is. It's a copy and paste. Okay. Then they go through the same thing. The subgroups. Again, these are not elected officials. These are appointed by the president and appointed by the secretary. These are appointed positions that are in place because of an executive order for the Hispanics. I'm done. You want to know why you broke? Because these people have come in and they have certain rights that you aren't given to. I'm going to keep going. Let's go to the next one. Now, there's also another one. Hold on. I skipped something. I want you to understand that. Where's that other one? That's this one. And. Okay, hold on. I'm going to have to type this in because I know this one. Okay, Chinese specific. We're talking about another executive order. There's so many damn executive orders, it just drives me nuts. Hold on, let me. I've been rambling so much. Let me stop for 1 second and check out the chat room. Happy Juneteenth, still up, Shirley. Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate you guys. You guys are just so supportive and what I have to say and what we have to understand. You know, we're talking about monies that are allocated towards other cultures of people, but unfortunately, we're not getting them. So for those who just chimed in, yes, I'm talking about Juneteenth. I'm also talking about how there's a difference between a bill and a law. It's a law put in place that was a bipartisan bill that was not an executive order. It was put through the channels of how we operate in this country, of both sides, Republicans and Democrat. And like I told you, if Joe the dog catcher was president, he would have to sign it in office. It's unfortunate we just have this man signing in office and he's going to claim it was because of him that you now have Juneteenth as a legal holiday. And technically, he has the right to claim that because he is the president. But it's a bipartisan bill. Where he could have circumvented that and gave it more empowerment is what he could have did. It was to create an executive order. But he didn't create an executive order because this bill was going to have to get signed because it was already created through Congress. The problem is this bill that's now a law has no money allocated. No money allocated for special events that will commemorate on that day to help these communities that don't have a lot of money to recognize the historical ramification, to educate the people. Instead, it just basically gives identity. And so what we're going to have is people out there solidifying and basically manipulating and saying, oh, aren't you excited? You got your Juneteenth day. Yay, you should be happy. You should be celebrating. You should have a voice of opinion. But the problem with this is there is no money. There's no money to help and better these people. So it's just another form of controlling you and keeping you structured to credit cards and banks When the other people get a very fair opportunity of balance, when you get ahead and you give them executive orders and you pushing bricks while these people got a nice ball rolling. Now, I just showed you an executive order through these other people. I showed you what the Pacific Islanders are getting. I showed you what the Latinos getting. I could go on and show you what the Jews are getting. But the bottom line is, what are Black people getting? Well, you got a holiday, just like you got Dr. King's holiday. You should be happy. You guys got holidays, but you're not getting no money from these white people. That's what they're trying to tell you. Oh, we're not giving them no money. Don't worry. It's okay. We're going to give them a holiday. That'll make them happy. Give them some free food. That'll make them happy. How ignorant do they think we are? How ignorant do we think they are? I hope the next generation is not as dumb as the people that we are dealing with in our culture right now. Because the people that are in office right now, who've been in office since Jesus was born, need to move on. They need to move on because they don't add value to our people. They don't empower us to have money positions. They don't empower us to sit next to the president and have to address the issues in these departments that can better our people. They don't do that. Why? Because they don't want to. Because if they were to do that, that would position us, and that would partly disposition them and empower them, right? Oh, if we do that, then what's going to happen is we'll give these people power. I don't know why, and someone have to explain to me and then why these people are so scared of Black people. I just don't understand it. I just don't know why. And like I told you, it took 2 years. It was designed to take 2 years. Do you know why it was designed to take 2 years? Because they don't want to give us no money. That's why. They don't want to give us no money. So they wanted to continue to pimp us out there in these fields and not make it clear for us. But you know, it's all good. It's all good because in the end, I want you to realize the real truths are out there. And until we understand that there's real truths that are out there that are not going to help us and they help everybody else, then you can forget it. The more executive orders that are put in place to displace you and to empower them, then you can forget it. The more executive orders for the Chinese, for the Pacific Islanders, and for every other culture of people to move them forward and have you disposition and continue to have you talk about white and Black people and discrimination and racism and hatred, you can forget it. It is not a forward-thinking mindset for our people. I would like to give you some homework. I would like you to look up Pacific Islanders. I would like you to look up what the Chinese got as executive orders. I would like you to see how these presidents who have been in office created these bills. Let me show you this one right here to let you know, for those who are questioning, well, surely, when did these things start? Remember, when they sign executive orders, these executive orders are put in place. Okay, this one was created by Bill Clinton in 1999. This is the first time where you see the Pacific Islanders. Again, an executive order is not a law nor a bill. It is a proposal that puts it ahead of the bill, and it instills it immediately. But it has to be re-signed by the following president so that it can commemorate and it can continue on. It was created under this administration, under the Clinton administration. And so under the Obama administration, what you got was executive orders for them ABC alphabet people. That's what you got under Obama. But you got Negroes so happy to say that they had a Black president who did executive orders regarding sex and race and tagged it and tied it to civil rights. Civil rights was not created for other people than descendants of slaves. When they talk about Dr. King and you see these parades with all these other cultures of people, Dr. King wanted gay rights. Dr. King, he did not want gay rights. He did not talk about equality when he talked about every encompassed group of people. He made it very clear. He talked about the descendants of Negro slaves. But again, the alteration of history and the manipulations of laws and truths in this country is astounding to me. And when people ask me, why don't you do videos? Why aren't you speaking somewhere? What good is it when we are so focused on celebrityism, when we don't identify what I have said numerous times to you, which is God, family, and country, and food? If you ain't focusing on God, family, and country, and you don't realize that we are hurting in this country right now. You have recession, you have gas prices and water prices, food prices. You have housing of interest rates going up to 10%. Ain't nobody talking about that. And when they do, they just gripe and moan and keep moving. Well, how far can you move before you can't move no more? You can't afford the gas. You can't pay your electric, your light, and gas bill. But you should be happy because you got a legal holiday that has no money allocated to it. In the meantime, they are able to help these other cultures of people because even if the country becomes dispositioned, they're able to utilize these departments that are empowering them. In the meantime, you get evicted. In the meantime, you're the person that becomes homeless, and the forbearance plans and evictions. And oh, yes, let's get these banks to give you loans. Do you realize when you get money from the federal government, you don't need no loan? It's free money. These things are free money. You know, if you're going to continue to help family members and give these other cultures of people free monies and unions and banks, and you're going to continue to see how government allows these committees to form, and the descendants of Negro slaves, the chattel slaves, don't get anything, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not a one-man show. I can't do this by myself. I need help. I need help on the educational aspect. I need help to make sure that whoever's in office, I don't care if it's under this little slow Joe can't ride a bike man, if you can put an executive order to allocate monies the same manner as everybody else, I would be more of a happy camper. If you can put executive orders to allow us to have a voice on the table in departments that are equivalent to make changes in this country, to make sure that our people are taken care of, I'd be happy. But you don't have that. What we do is say we have to go to our black leaders, these CBC leaders. But remember, these people elected in office are for their own states. They happen to be of the black diaspora or the darker hue. And so people assume that that's the people we go to. Maxine Waters doesn't represent the black people of the United States. She's supposed to represent her people in her district in California. Sheila Jackson, represents her people in Texas. But these people aren't using only people they get elected. They're using monies and positions through federal government, through executive orders, and that we don't have. Am I making that clear to you? That we don't have. But we sit back and we get happy with it. If you're not going to have clarity of history and how it affects you, then what good is it? What good is it to continue to pander black people who don't get the rights and the benefits of it? When we go back and talk about the emancipation, we go back and we talk about Juneteenth Day, I want to tell you how monies go back to white people. And I want to show you that right now. Reparations were given to white people right after the emancipation. There are white people in this country who got checks. Okay? They got checks. And the reason why they got checks, I got to find that video. Let me keep going. Here we go. Reparations for slaves. I want you to understand, slave owners were angry. You had free labor. Now you done freed these people. That's why they dragged that damn 2 years out, 2.5 years, or whatever that time frame was out. But now that it was dragged out, I need some money. I have all this land with these Negroes, and they're gone. I need to be compensated. Lincoln would have never compensated this way. He was moving forward to the Freedmen Bureau policies, and we'll go and do a video on that later on, that never got instilled. And I talked about that special order number 15 and how special order number 15 was supposed to correct the disenfranchised of America, because we became disenfranchised, right? We became broken because how this country was ran was through human labor. But once it became broken and these black people were freed, what did they do with these Negroes? So Lincoln had it in place where we were going to have executive orders like you see for these people. We're going to have certain committees. We're going to even have our own police system for our own people, by our own people. There was a plan of action that General Sherman and Lincoln were going to in place. But unfortunately, them as well as the radical Republicans working together couldn't do that because Andrew Johnson changed those laws. What Andrew Johnson did do is did a performance of helping slave owners get compensated for the loss of their Negro. Yes, they did. They had to compensate these poor white people who were disenfranchised. And understand, if I was white, I get it. Because I'm going, wait a minute, I had all these free niggas and now I can't have them no more. So what am I? You want me to work this 400 pieces of land? These people had a lot of land, right? They had 400 or 500 pieces acres of land. And now they have all these free slaves and ain't nobody working. The crops are dying. The reharvesting is done. and they want to get compensated for it. They were supposed to split that land up and let the people get housed on it. Oh no, them white people weren't going for that. So what did they do?
It's true. Some slave owners demanded reimbursement for their lost property after emancipation, and by 1876 the demand, and its overwhelming associated cost, had become useful as a threat. The above article in the New York Times, dated October 21st, 1876, i.e., just before the big presidential election, contains the claim that Democrats planned on demanding slave owner compensation if they won the election. It's tough to believe that such a project would have been feasible, but either way, the Republicans prevailed. Even in defeat, however, the Democrats made their point by working to stop all federal compensation to Southern Unionists for their losses during the Civil War. These payments were made by the Southern Claims Commission, an entry about which we'll be publishing soon. The commission was established in 1871 to compensate Southern Unionists only for certain kinds of property appropriated by the Union Army during the war. About $4.5 million in claims was paid between 1871 and 1880. So how much compensation would we be talking for slave owners? Try, according to these calculations, $5.8 billion. This is not adjusted to current dollars. As a point of comparison, the entire federal government only spent $304 million in 1880.
Now, I want you to let that absorb into your system. When you want to disposition a culture of people, empower another culture of people with money, infuse them with opportunity or compensation for their losses. Where have my people who are African American descendants of slaves been infused with money? This is white people now. Now, we're not talking about Mexicans, Chinese, we're not talking about that. Where have we been infused with opportunities to this magnitude? Look at this number. Look at this number. Right? And then if you're not going to infuse us with money, you're going to do an executive order to position us to have a voice of reason at the table in every one of these damn departments. You have a voice on the table. And when you see your people dispositioned, you're going to speak to the Department of State, the Department of Treasury. You see your people being not having access to equity and having access to the economy and having access to housing, you're going to go to the Justice Department. You're going to go to the Department of Interior. When you know that there's agricultural issues of your people being taken care of, you're going to have the access to the Department of Agriculture. There's black farmers right now who are going through lawsuits because we don't have this executive order in place regarding agriculture, who won cases, and then white farmers got mad. Didn't these white farmers get compensated back when we talk about these articles of billions of black people, of billions of dollars I just showed you? Because I want you to, and people, hold on, I know what you're thinking. White people will say, but that was back then. When we talk about inherited wealth, let's talk about that. Inherited wealth. And you have politics and policies that divide communities. In California, in Pasadena, you have North Pasadena and South Pasadena. North Pasadena at one time was divided by the 210. Do your homework. It was divided by the 210. North Pasadena is where the black people live. South Pasadena was white people live. South Pasadena owned by Boa Island in Irvine, and they had bungalows that they were buying that they bought for $60,000. A bungalow today is probably worth $2.5 million that allowed them to have a second family vacation home. Black people didn't have second family vacation homes to the magnitude of division. So I think in 1979 or 78, the Fair Housing Commission said we will no longer have steering of divisions of communities in this magnitude. Same thing throughout other parts of the South, where you have areas that are allocated where black people were stigmatized and placed. And then white people said, whoa, this is kind of a nice neighborhood. Let's take this over and let's diversify and integrate other cultures of people in it so those people can't dominate. because we're going to give them leverage of opportunity and equalization. Now, if you don't call that being played and pandered against, something wrong with you. So yes, this is old money. This is descendant of white people money. Well, you wonder why these people are having the power position they have today, and how these immigrants are coming up off of you. Let me show you something else. Let me get out of this real quick. I want to talk about how the Ukrainians now are going to black universities and are given opportunities, the Ukrainians. And the why they are is because the Ukrainians, hold on, are given free education and housing through HBCU. Now, why didn't they give them that at USC? No, because they don't like these historical black universities. Okay? So under the Biden administration, they're giving that away to them too. See, they taking your schools, they taking your housing. I'm tired of y'all not educating yourself and seeing how these people have more power and rights in government and education than school. So now your historical universities right now are being invaded right now in 2020. This just passed and came into place. As you can see, Hampton University addressed the critical of free housing tuition for Ukrainians. These poor people, again, people who talk from a voice of disposition, is a problem in this country. When you hear commercials and TV shows and sitcoms and reality shows of when they bring people in, like if you watch Project Runway, they're going to constantly infuse in your brain these people. And I came from Africa. I had nothing. My dad was broke. And then they start crying. And then they say, but the American dream, because you got the American dream because they gave you a whole bunch of money. But many of you guys watch these shows and you don't understand. You are being programmed to accept that you're less than these people. You're being programmed. Homeless people are being programmed. Black people are being programmed that these people have positions. Hold on, let me that thing's taking forever to play. So let's see if I can get some of it to read to us what Hampton University is now doing. Hampton University is a black historical college.
Hampton University has received significant backlash from its students and alumni after the school announced it would allow students impacted by the war in Ukraine to study at their campus for free. In March, the school announced that it would allow students studying in Ukraine and around the world who are impacted by the ongoing war to attend the Virginia-based HBCU in the summer for free.
So they get free food, they get free housing, they get free for free. For free. Now, how is it that this is a black university? Why don't you put them people at UCLA? Why don't you put them people at Stanford or Harvard? No, because they don't want these black universities to remain anymore. They're pushing them into diversification. They're reversing the role, saying, well, you know, we were pushed to put blacks in our university, then we need to push to put Ukrainians into historical black universities. But this is the problem, my people. These people are dominating black universities. They're not like if you take 100%, say, okay, let's put 20% and let this university continue its historical ramifications. No, you're having more. In Prairie View University, they have slave grounds. They have grounds, historical grounds where slaves were buried. But now some of these slave grounds, like you see in Geechee Island over in South Carolina, these are backyard headstones put in white people's properties. These white people are manipulating history and erasing it, and now them white people up there talking about, oh, I got me some Negroes in my backyard. I'm not going to go into that video, but I just want to tell you how they are taking things away from you that was your people and not protecting you. There's no protective class other than them and not you.
The backlash on social media came swiftly as many people questioned why the university would help these international students while many students already on campus were struggling themselves. We have received criticism and we've received calls asking for further explanation, said Margaret Martin, the Hampton University Ukrainian chair in an exclusive with News One. At the core of it, we are simply saying that we can help because we are an institution of higher education. We can help in that area. The idea to help these students came from Hampton University President William Harvey, who has stepped up and offered similar assistance in situations like this before. Hampton offered Xavier University of Louisiana students a chance to study at Hampton for free when Hurricane Katrina caused serious damage to their campus. Years later, students at the University of the Bahamas would get the same opportunity after Hurricane Dorian. His thinking was that when Hampton has the ability to offer assistance and help to people in need, we try to do that, said Martin. Hampton is in the business of education and service. That's been our legacy since our founding in 1868. Many in the HBCU community were critical of the move by Hampton because students who don't even go to the university were getting free access to resources on campus that many other students could have utilized. The university says that their students are their first concern and they encourage any student to ask for help.
Now you tell me how this is fair. You tell me how this is fair. If you're going to alter the purpose of historical Black universities, is so that our people can come together and feel comfortable to talk about the oppressions and how America has basically looked at us as inhuman people, and then talk about the disposition of government, talk about the disposition of executive orders, and to be encouraged by their own people. You can't have those conversations anymore. You have to have this altered conversation of inclusivity. The reason why Black moms and dads put their children and do these historical Black tours is so that we can also save our history and save our children. But Hampton University is a beautiful college near the water in Florida, and these people know that, and they want that land. And these Black people have sold us out, just like these politicians have sold us out. And yet now we see that they're giving money and positions, and now our own children can't even pay for school, and they don't get degrees, and they don't get, but we're gonna help everybody else. I'm too done.
Martin said that none of the money allotted strictly for Hampton students will be touched for the Ukraine initiative. Hampton students have access to $30 million in annual endowed scholarship money and $73 million in federal funding. Our students here at Hampton are first. They're our first concern. They are the center and the focus of what we do here, stated Martin. There is no project, there is no group of people that we would ever put before them or that we consider more important than they are. The conversation around this decision by Hampton officials has sparked a national conversation about how HBCUs should insert themselves into world issues. It's an act of kindness for people who have been displaced. Students who have had to flee the country on a moment's notice and have either landed in their home countries or a country that is not home wishing to continue their educational pursuit, said Martin. We saw that as an opportunity to lend a helping hand, and we hope and believe that our student body is coming to understand that, and that our alumni base is coming to understand that.
Let that sink in. Let me read this one more time.
The conversation around this decision by Hampton officials has sparked a national conversation about how HBCUs should insert themselves into world issues.
How HBCUs should insert themselves in the world issues. Well, let me ask you this. Is Hampton inserting themselves? Is USC inserting themselves to this position? Because I know SC's got a whole bunch of Chinese people because they can use them Chinese laws. But if we're talking about historical Black colleges, and we use the word Black, but oh, that's right, everybody's Black. They probably would just say historical people of color. That's what they're gonna change this damn thing to. Historical people of color. They're gonna do this. Man gonna do an executive order and restructure again the erasing and rewriting of American history and its purpose, its laws that are altered and stimulated to not work in the best interest of descendants of slaves, are commemorating at a pace that I've never seen in my lifetime. Instead, now we got to get involved in world issues. It's very unfortunate what's going on in Ukraine and Russia. It's very unfortunate. It's very sad. It's very dispositioning. But keep in mind what I came from. Keep in mind what I contribute. My people, my bloodline contributed. Keep in mind what my bloodline has gone through and still going through. Because it's an ugly situation where white people as well as Black want to continue to forget the homelessness, the discrimination, the police brutality. It's become numbing that we basically, when we hear it, we don't hear it. It's subliminal to the point that we go, okay, well, that's always in. What's nothing big? But let's show poor babies. Let's show poor people of other countries and have more compassion to those non-contributing building people and give them the same rights or even better as those who are descendants of slaves. I don't think so. I don't think that's right at all. And unless you guys wake up and see what is happening in this country and how these people are able to come here, and now you have this crazy administration that's in office that ain't working for you. They ain't working for you. They're working for themselves. So don't get excited about a holiday that's basically going to say to you, hey, you should be happy. You got a legal holiday. The best you're going to get out of this, I'm going to tell you, the best you're going to get out of this is your day off work. That's it. And a conversation with a white person. But to tie this into Dr. King, it doesn't tie in. To tie this into money, it doesn't tie in. And let me tell you, the number one factor and problem with Black people right now is how we were educated by our educators about, let's talk about Dr. King. Let's talk about simple equality. There's no such thing as simple equality anymore because the race theory framework is also evolving. It's a mess. And I just showed you this framework. See, I was this little boy that's talking to the Black teacher right here. That was me. That's how they taught us. That's how we were taught. But then I became this man. I became a grown woman that realized this other side is bullshit what this little boy's writing on the screen. What we got to deal with is all these things and some, right? But the most thing you have to understand is executive orders are empowering and infusing money in these communities that dispositions you, and you guys don't have no problem with that. You have no problem with seeing how your people are being taken down and your people are hurting. That's the part that I don't like in this country, and that's the part that really, really looks bad. If we want to think about the future of our children and we want to bring them together to have a voice on the table, we have to make sure that they have a voice that is being able to have a conversation. We are a happy people. We are a loving people. We always embrace everybody else in their damn culture. We do. We always include other people. We bring them into our table. And once they're able to say Black and brown, then the brown people say just brown. That's what happens. The Asian people say just Asian. After they utilize your civil rights and take the balance that brought you to the table, and then they push themselves ahead of you. But no, now you have a situation of people moving out of blue states into red states because they know, hell, I know what's going on. I'm not getting nothing out of these states. And now you have government, no matter where you move to, they are tipping the scale and giving it to somebody else. It is important that we communicate. It is important that we talk to one another, because if we don't talk to one another, we fail ourselves. And if we're going to continue to fail ourselves, we're not going to move forward. Let me see if I can check out some of y'all in line. Thank you so much for speaking, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown got a lot to say. Mr. Brown, African people are not, okay, I talked about that. Look, the Pan-African movement is real, right? There's a lot of discussion on the table about Pan-African and African Americans. I think white people and Black people need to know this. All Negroes are not the same. The Caribbeans, the Jamaicans, the Belizeans, and the African American descendants of slaves, of chattel slaves, are different. And when it comes to America, the leaders of that voice need to be us first. So let me clarify that we should be the voices that lead, and that other people who have voices on the table shouldn't talk about that. Okay, there's a conversation talking about Elon Musk, who said he is African American. Elon Musk, a race. Okay, let me explain Elon Musk this and what he stated in his Twitter. Elon Musk tweeted out, "I'm African American." Now, Elon Musk, I thought was Russian, so I was real off. I had to look it up. He's South African. Elon Musk is South African, so he's kind of like an Obama, right? He's African and American. Elon Musk pledged citizenship in America. That made him an American. But Elon Musk's foundation is South African. He's an African American. So when Black people saw that spin on words, they come on, what is he talking about? And they're going all off. The man technically is African American, but not the African American who we are. So here again is another word, African American, Black, and colored, all being twisted. That's why you hear the new terminology of descendants of slavery, American descendants of American slavery. Black families first, FB1. That's why you're hearing a distinguished difference because of the confusion and the muddleness of all these people and understanding what an African American really is in this country. So technically, I'm sorry, he is African American. He is from South African, and he's pledged his citizenship here in America. What we have to do in this country is to realize who are the real African Americans and how it's set, because the name has transcended, but the definition has changed. So if we just clarify these are descendants of American slavery, then you ain't got no problem. You can say whatever you want. It's not a broad brush of just saying black, colored, African American. No, I made it very clear what kind of Negro I am. We are always tied to these gays because gays ran off the civil rights movement, Miles. That's what's happened here. And that's why you talk about illegal rights. The illegals ran on the same way the gays ran. That's all they did. They ran on that same kind of spindle so that they can get money. This is all about money and opportunity. Because you ain't going to get none because you ain't got no executive order in place that's going to help and better your people. You know, Negroes, this history of I'm helping raises all of the blind support. You know, as we continue to talk about crime in America and discrimination and police officers wearing cameras, again, this is a distortion to have you get away from the money's not allocated towards you and to infuse the anger and hatred. You know, we talk about anger and hatred in this country. Media plays a part of that. Media plays a part of that. Voices of leadership play a part of that. When we use the word systemic racism and white supremacy and all these things stir up energy of emotions in people, right? I don't care about none of that. Just give me some money. Give me leverage to put in my communities, businesses and jobs, and put me with my people so I have access to talk to the department that has to do with fair housing because I've got a representative. And I'm not talking about a representative of a state or of the city or city council water bar. I have representatives like those people through executive orders that I can contact those departments of interior because they gave them representatives in those departments. That's what Black people need. And that's where the energy needs to shift so that we can create a balance within this country. But what you have is a disposition of leverage because we don't know, which I'm teaching you today. For those who came in late on this video, please take the time to like and share this video within your groups. Slow it down, pause it, do your homework, look up what I'm talking about, and add to the discussion at the end of this video in the comments section. Because I need help, and someone helping me to understand what I'm reading is so true from my perspective. But I want to hear from your perspective and how do we turn this around? Because the only way that you can find a solution, because I don't like to leave videos where people feel like all opened and like, well, what do we do? I'm gonna tell you what you need to do. You need to have an executive order. You cannot look to CBC. You cannot look to the NBA. You can't, I mean NBA, meaning NAACP and NBA either. NAACP. And I'll say NBA. You know why I say these pro ball players and football players that sit back and kneeled and didn't want to stand. And then when these white people offered you money, you said, oh, I don't need no money. Well, your communities need money. You should allocate part of your check as a person who's an athlete out there. You need to allocate part of your check instead of getting on your damn knee and make it go back in the community and create leadership of voices on the table. But see, we don't have that because we're too focused on Pan-Africanism and celebrityism, which is a bunch of BS, okay? It's time to assess ourselves. This is true. Absolutely, Mel. And I think when we do that and we start doing our homework and we start having discussions, I'm hoping this would spin off other videos where people, or I was on Tariq Nasheed's channel one time, and I said, you know, we need executive orders put in place. And Black people talking about Black people first. We want reparations. We need executive orders to position us in a power position and play the game like they play the game. We need to play chess as the way they do. We are playing checkers, people. We are not playing chess. And unless we play chess, we are not going to move ahead. We're too busy worried about Mexicans and illegals and immigrants. These people are empowered and infused. The Mexicans lead their whole voice with numbers of disposition and power. Like I told you before, is this theirs? Hold on, where am I at? I find theirs interesting. No, this is the Pacific Islanders. Because, okay, here's the Hispanics ones, right? They start talking about numbers. Their first policy to let these white people know we've got millions of children and millions of numbers. And then the Asians didn't lead by that. So they let you know we're gonna outnumber you, we're gonna outvote you, and we're gonna put more of our people in place. Because I honestly believe that this administration's agenda, ooh, I'm talking and I'm not showing you. Hold on. I gotta show you this. This administration, hold on with me. This administration, okay, so here is the executive order for the Hispanics. Okay, now you say Hispanics, you could probably throw in Honduras, but you remember Honduras looked black, right? So the Honduras can claim to be black, and then they can jump the aisle and say that they Hispanic. Dominican Republic it might fall into this category too. I mean, let me know in the chat room what y'all think. These people can play two sides of the aisle, right? That's why you need to make it more specific to African Americans who are descendants of American slavery. We have to make it more specific to identify us because it's too much to jump the aisle. Oh, okay, well, I'm gay. I'm going to jump on this card. I'm going to jump on that card. I'm going to get this check. I can't jump on these people check. You know, I can show you I got some Asian in my DNA. So maybe I should just claim that so I can get a check and say I'm Asian. You know, Plague ain't gonna look and say, I just want to talk about black people all the time. And now she claimed to be Asian according to her DNA. That ain't gonna play too well. But see, they lead from a voice of disposition in numbers. Then they talk about education and they creating a position of entrepreneurship. Okay, entrepreneurship and government advocacy for businesses in the community. And banks allocated. I did a whole video on that. That is a whole disposition in the black communities. And then you have black universities giving their education away to these foreigners, including these illegals as well as immigrants in this country. Y'all need to wake up and see the real truth because this ain't no joke. I'm trying to go through these questions. Andrew Jackson, okay. Johnson, the president who was there, moved. Oh, yeah. He removed a lot of things. He was the worst president in U.S. history because what Lincoln was going to do, and maybe one day I'll do a whole thing on Lincoln, but what Lincoln was going to empower this country, and you would see a different America. You would truly see a different America and a different respect for black people. But we are in another form of slavery. They just changed the terminology. That's all they do. They just changed the terminology. Right now, minorities, it should be inclusive of black people. Minority was black, but minority is not black anymore. Minority is white women. Minority is gays, LGBT, ABCD. Everybody's a minority. You know, handicap. No offense. I'm just telling you, everybody's a minority now. So you get crumbs. If you're going to allocate, proposals or grants, remember how we read how they're giving them grants, how they're giving them bills, and even if they end up giving them loans through SBA, they're giving them that from a position of minority. So we get the crumbs when we don't have things specifically designed just for us. That's part of the lie. Well, that's true. That's true. And the more that we realize that we're being lied to, it's a pander. So yes, I'm excited about Juneteenth because we're able to have a discussion for those who are able to watch this video that I'm not upset about it becoming a legal holiday. What I want you to understand is that there's no money behind it. There's no money behind it for even in its celebration because there should be money allocated per city to celebrate parades and events to help support it in the educational aspect of it. But it isn't. It's going to have to be privately funded or poorly done. So it'll be like the poor man's the poor man's celebration. That's all it's going to come off looking like is the poor man's celebration. But if we as a people can get together and put an executive order, and all you got to do is cut and paste, that's all you got to do, because that's all you saw with all these other people. They did a bunch of cutting and pasting. That's all they did to get what they need out of these white people. And these white people, if you think they really want to help you, that they would do this, right? But no, they don't. They are dispositioning you, and what you're having is other cultures of people able to do what they're going to do, and that's Republican and Democrats. All right. So this person here is talking about the Lebanese. I guess they're trying to. Look, they're getting their citizenship. Everybody wants to be a citizen right now in this country because this administration's got open book policy to help everybody else except for the foundational people, including white people. Okay? American women do not care nor seem to be concerned about the seams except by being poor. Well, this is the programming of the mind of the media. Like I mentioned before, you watch these shows, they lead from a voice of disposition, and you guys need to write that down. There are people in this country who put events on and they talk about leading from a voice of disposition. We can't, if I go and start talking to people, well, I'm a descendant of slaves. Oh, that was hundreds of years ago. Why are you talking about that? See, it's not connectable to say you are a descendant of slave. It's not relatable to the people. But if the media is showing these poor white babies, these poor Jewish babies, they got them commercials too, and how we need to give money to all these other people poor. Why don't they do videos of poor, homeless black people? That's more relevant since you don't want to talk about slavery and leverage. Why don't you show that? Oh, no, that makes America look bad. Hell no. We got to still look like we're the main players in this country. Okay? Reparations are going to have to take a while to set back until you have an executive order, until you have a president that supports it, until you can clarify why black people need reparations. Because right now, white people got reparations and they don't even know they got it, and they don't relate to it because it was hundreds of years ago, right? So what do you do about that? And I think Hampton University is just the beginning. I think you're going to see Prairie View. You're going to see a lot of universities that would easily jump on that bandwagon. But because of the pushback, they're going to be a little bit more careful. But see, they're going to be those federal monies that they're going to be allocating to help these people. And because they're going to have that federal money allocated, these schools are going to want to jump on board. They want the money. The professors in these black universities, they want this money to help these people. So they ain't thinking about you. Because in the end, it's all about a damn check, right? It's all about a check. So I want to thank you guys so much for chiming in, Vanessa and Royal. I wish I could answer all your questions. I'm kind of pooped out, but I hope that what I shared with you today kind of gave you a better perspective of what Black history is about and what it brings to the table, especially the Juneteenth. Juneteenth was designed to basically show a closure of what finally happened regarding the emancipation. But even in all of that, we are still behind the wheel of the blocks, because they are giving everybody else a chance to roll right through this. But until we understand how Juneteenth is commemorated and what we should get from Juneteenth other than just having holidays that don't have monies to support it, then we're going to fail ourselves. It starts by having conversations of true knowledge, not simple knowledge of Black history. Black history is not simple. American history is not simple. And until we stop accepting the word of it's simple, it's not simple. Pan-Africanism is not simple. And until we get that out of our vocabulary, we'll never have clarification of anything. We'll just continue to feel sorry and have to use the word inclusive. You can't include everybody on everything. You can't. You just can't. You've got to continue to understand what type of person you are, what you bring to the table, and what you need to be walking away from it. Because I think what happens in the end, when you have that understanding, then you're able to move forward. But if you don't, and your mindset is being infused from the media of how to think and how to work in the best interest of everybody else, you'll never be able to help your own people. God bless you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure that you like, click on the bottom, share your thoughts. Let me know the directions you like to have more conversations on. But thank you so much for sharing and talking about Juneteenth. Thank you for the people that went out and celebrated it. But let's bring the full circle to the table. Black people are still needing money and leverage and being leveraged against. Until we understand how government is running against us and not working with us, we will never have closure and we'll never be healed from what happened, from the devastation of slavery from 1619 to where we are in 2000 and 2022. So anyway, God bless you guys. I love you. Please click the like button. Share this video on groups. Share this video on private emails and group emails, and have the discussion of why the leverage is not working for you and what can we do to better that. It starts with individuals like you, not just people like me. God bless you and good night.